Hello, welcome to my family linguistic journey for our ELL 515, and this is the artifact number 3. My name is Lakin Molina, and welcome to my presentation. To start off, I would like for us to all reflect on my family tree 3 generations back. As you can see, it starts with me. I was born in 1993. I was not bilingual. However, I do understand the languages that was inherited through my mother. My mother, she's Savina Jordan Molina, and she was born in 1967. Um, as for my father, he was born in 1966. Of my father, I do, obviously he did have his parents. However, a lot of their background were unknown. Um, his father was a immigrant from Mexico, and that's where he inherited the Spanish language. Through his mother, Henrietta Kisto, they're both deceased, by the way. I'm sorry to mention. And they and she is from the Gila River Indian community. This is where he inherited the Otham language. As for my mother, she was bilingual. She spoke the English language as well as the Apache language. She inherited from my grandparents, Marlena Jordan, Gussion Jordan. She was born in 1935. As for my grandfather, Delbert Jordan Sr., he was born in 1922. They were both bilingual. They were both fluent in the Apache language. And my grandmother, up until she passed, she would speak mainly Apache. So, of 3 generations back from myself, here are the family languages each of us either spoken at one point or currently still have before they departed. So within my background, I could have inherited about 4 different languages. Um, that is Spanish, Otham, Apache, and English. Um, I could understand some Apache. I could say the basic things. However, I am not fluent. So here I have a timeline of the, linguistic journey starting from my grandparents' days. And I did want to start out with the North American languages in about the 1800s. I did read that there were different types of languages in the United States, as well as over 300 indigenous languages that were acceptable during that time, which I think it was like a pivotal point in history, just considering the amount of languages that were available. In 1919, about 3 years before my grandparents were born, the Department of Bureau of Education adopted a resolution that recommended that the English language would be the primary language in public education in each state. And, this was the start of the movement However, my grandparents were born between 1922 and 1935. Um, they were both, as well as my paternal grandparents, they were born all around this time frame, and they all were either primarily speaking their native tongue, which was Apache for my maternal, and Otham in Spanish for my paternal. Next, we have between 1927 and 1940, my paternal grandparents, which is the only, like I stated previous, is all that I do know right now. Through these years, my paternal grandmother and grandfather were living on the San Carlos Apache Reservation and attended a government slash religious school in Bailes, Arizona. My grandmother completed sixth grade, and that was the furthest in her education. As for my grandfather, he completed up to eighth grade. And this, you know, from my understanding in my interview with a few community members, they shared that the Bailes Day School was primarily taught by a African American lady and was managed by a white guy. And I believe, and I would probably predict that this was the start of their English speaking transition. From 1939 to 1945 is when the World War II and the Great Depression had started, and this was the war that my grandpa was sent off to. He was released on honorable mention in 1945. I believe in this time frame he was really bilingual and very fluent in both English and Apache. And since then, he kind of had that military mentality when he came back and raised, my mother and her siblings with that knowledge. From 1966 to 1967, my mother was born as well as my father, and they were both bilingual. As they grew up and transitioned to high school, getting older, my mother attended school and graduated in 1985. During her time in school, the reservation school was managed by a lot of Mormon belief people, and those were the ones that really emphasized their religion during that time. As for my father, he was locating throughout Tucson and Phoenix areas, where he graduated at the Phoenix Indian Boarding School, which is no longer in existence now. And throughout his life living and foster homes, he did lose both of his language and gradually transitioned to only speaking English. So throughout, this timeline, it really changed a lot to who I am now. Like I said, I am not bilingual. However, I do speak and understand Apache at the minimum. And the way our history has aligned and kind of ran its course, a lot of our language was primarily directed to English. So, thank you so much for reflecting with me today.